Hi, I'm Dan, Digital Experience Design Master Student at High Pride in Manchester. In this tutorial, I would like to tell you about paper prototyping for web interfaces as an early part of the user-centered design process. This tutorial is aimed at any kind of professional that is involved in the process of creating web or other screen interfaces. Paper prototyping is a discipline that has been around for ages. It has regained popularity with the spread of agile design methodologies inspired by movements such as human or user-centered design and design thinking. These philosophies have one major thing in common. According to Don Norman, self-proclaimed advocate of human and user-centered design, it is about starting with a good understanding of people and the needs that the design is intended to meet. Prototyping, or especially paper prototyping, is a research methodology that helps to visualize and test ideas and concepts in an early stage of a project. This can be done with a minimum investment in time and cost, or as UXPin states, nothing brings you closer to the functionality of the final product than prototyping. As said before, paper prototyping is an early, but not the first method in a user-centered design process. Prior to prototyping, you should have a goal in mind, and you should have gained knowledge through other research methodologies. Let's make up an example. You want to build an application for a pizza delivery service. The ultimate goal for this service is that your average customer, John, 28, may painlessly and easily place an order with his phone based on the following criteria. John wants to order 2 pizzas. One is spicy salami. The other one he's not sure about yet. John wants to deliver to his work address, and he wants to be able to pay with his credit card. A main goal, persona, scenarios, user journeys, or even storyboards should have been set up before you start prototyping. Based on this knowledge, you start drawing interfaces that allow your user to perform this particular task. As you work through your user journeys, you draw up all single screens, steps, and screen elements. They will later end up being laid out in a flow scenario in which your potential user is going to navigate. Start with a blank piece of paper that resembles the shape and dimension of the screen you're designing for. For smaller devices such as phones or watches, you might use an oversized piece of paper as a simplified drawing. Chris Nodder with lynda.com suggests that you should make a screen template that is at least 4 times the surface area of the actual device. From my personal experience, this is not really necessary. I have done iPhone-sized prototypes that have just worked fine. Furthermore, real-sized prototypes feel closer to the actual device when testing them later. Find out for yourself what works best for you. But let's get back to pen and paper. For the main interface of the screen, you might be using an entire sheet of paper. When it comes to single UI elements and controls, such as drop-downs, overlays, expandables, etc., take some scissors and cut these elements out of another sheet of paper. You can even use sticky notes. These cut-out elements will give you agility and flexibility when testing your prototype later. Don't forget different screen states, such as selected or unselected checkboxes and radio buttons. Keep working through scenarios and storyboards and draw up all relevant screens and elements of your prototype in order to show all screens and states of a potential user journey. Nevertheless, and as paper prototyping should be quick and easy, you don't need to draw up every single screen of a potential final product. Jakob Nielsen suggests that you should have always 2 backup screens ready instead. A loading screen and an under construction screen. I'm going to tell you more about these 2 screens when we talk about testing. There are a lot of tools and materials that can come in handy when prototyping. Here's a list of materials that might help you process. Remember, prototyping ought to be fast, easy and fun. You don't aim for polished and fancy product. Therefore, stick to the KISS metrics and keep it simple, stupid. Don't get caught up in losing time in order to organize supplies and tools and gadgets. There are only 2 things you really need, a pen and paper. If you want to use more, you certainly can. Jakob Nielsen has a couple of specific recommendations when it comes to material. In an interface featuring forms, use a transparency sheet or correction types. You don't need to use multiple copies of the form. Use well-visible and mid-tip pens. Draw up your prototype in black and white. Colors can come in at a later stage of the process. The main reason for building prototypes is that we can test them on real users, get feedback, and learn early whether our ideas and concepts work. It is all about answering the question whether we are doing the right thing. Eliminating occurring issues may save you time in the development of higher fidelity prototypes, the design phase, or of course the actual development. This is when you are trying to do things right. Correctly conducting user testings is a topic by itself. Ideally, designers involved in the project attend or even carry out the testings themselves. If this is not possible, you might think of recording the session in order to be able to show the outcome later. Paper prototype testings are much like regular testings and obviously require a real user. According to Jakob Nielsen, 5 users are enough to find about 80% of potential issues. He also suggests that the majority of issues can be eliminated with 3 testings attended by 5 users per session. Ideally, you test with your potential or real users. Finding and recruiting them may be too time-consuming and expensive though. Therefore, you might consider hallway tests. As the name suggests, you are utilizing people in the hallway or a public area to test your prototype on. Find a neutral and quiet testing environment with a table and chairs so that you can fit all the participants in. Apart from a tester, the session requires at least 2 more people. Number 1 is the facilitator that instructs users and interacts with them. Person number 2 is the computer. This person doesn't talk during the session and is in charge of changing screens and screen states whenever the user interacts with your prototype. There might be a 3rd person scribing and other people observing. Apart from the human resources, you obviously need your prototype screens. Rather than just placing them on a table, have a mock-up of your device ready. This may just be a larger piece of paper, larger than your drawings, and showing a frame printed or drawn onto it. This will be the device where you place your interfaces on. When testing a touch device, users touch elements on your prototype in order to interact with them. When testing a desktop website, give your user a pen which they can use to point at elements. A pen is also useful if the user needs to fill out forms. Testing sessions need to be well planned and well conducted. Start off with greeting your users and introduce them to yourself, the computer, and people in the room. Clearly explain the testing scenario and how the paper prototype works. Tell users that you're testing a potential system and not them. Let them know that they can't do anything wrong. Furthermore, instruct them to verbally state their thinking process and any faults whilst interacting with your prototype. Once the general introduction is done, introduce them to the task. In order to get them chatty, show and hand them the testing script and make them read it out loud. The script consists of the persona the user is acting or playing, the scenario, and the task. Make sure that users really understand what you expect from them and start the test. Now, that's the exciting bit. You're testing your prototype. Observe closely how the user performs and what kind of reaction and feedbacks you get. Do not interrupt or question. Talk as little as possible. If users get stuck, let them find a way out, or wait until they question you. Respond as little as possible, or at least wait until the end of the session. Ask open questions instead, such as, how did you feel? What did you expect? As mentioned earlier, your prototype might not be intended to cover every single aspect of the final product. Therefore, I mentioned 2 backup screens, the loading screen and the under construction screen. As a computer, always have the loading screen ready in case you cannot find an appropriate screen or if you need to make adjustments. The under construction screen comes in handy when users leave the desired path and end up somewhere they shouldn't have ended up in the first place. This does not only provide an indication that there might be something wrong with your process, but it also gives you the chance to ask users why they ended up getting lost. At the end of a testing session, talk to your user and give them the opportunity to state further questions and comments about the process, expectations, and feelings during the session. Paper prototyping or rapid prototyping is an easy and fun way to research and validate the value of your ideas and concepts in an early stage of a project. This is not only going to save you time and money, it will also save you nerves when dealing with your client later. Well, there are also critical voices and opinions on paper prototyping that I haven't covered. Jack Knapp, author of a book about the Google Venture Design Sprint method, considers paper prototyping a waste of time. Well, let me know what you think and get in touch if you have questions or comments. Thanks a lot for watching.